Alright, hello everyone, I'm Raleigh and welcome to today's video. Over the last couple days I talked about how I think today we're going to get the retrospective blog post, and here we are. ArenaNet did release their retrospective blog post with some really cool stuff uh, for the future. So I kind of want to do even more speculation because I did skim through the post. I didn't actually read it, but I did look at the pictures, and there's a video at the end, and we're going to talk about all of it. And I do have some more speculation for the Janthier Wilds. But apparently next week we're going to get a big reveal, and I guess they're going to show us what's in the new expansion coming. But yeah, like I said, there's some interesting things that I want to talk about. So let's kind of look at the blog post first of all. So let's read through it. Secrets of the Obscure, looking back and forward. Hello, Guild Wars. Oh, hey, Guild Wars. This is hey, not hello. Guild Wars community. Josh Davis here, game director for Guild Wars 2. Last week's content update was a significant milestone for us, both technically and symbolically. Okay, interesting. It marked the final major release for Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure, our first foray into the annual expansion model, first announced in early 2023. As we conclude one chapter with the final content update of Secrets of the Obscure, we are eagerly preparing to unveil the details of our next expansion. Before we get all swept up by next week's news of what's coming for Guild Wars 2, I want to take a moment to reflect on the development of Secrets of the Obscure and some of the high-level learnings that we've taken forward with us into our 5th expansion. So, I talked about this yesterday. I'm going to kind of stop here for a second. I talked about this yesterday. So, the retrospective, right? I haven't read any of it, but yesterday we went through one of the blog posts, and many of their blog posts are very vague in the things that they say. There's a lot of like words and not enough substance. So I'm actually going to be looking for substance in this, because they're giving us the vague stuff here, but they're doing that in like, hey, we're talking about it down here. So it's like, okay, here you're giving us the vague thing about some high-level learnings, whatever that means, but give us more specifics down here. So we'll see. We'll see what they say. You won't learn about the specific features, setting, or story of our next expansion in this blog post. That's for next week, but you'll have a better understanding of how we're approaching its development. Okay, interesting. I like it. I mean, obviously no specifics, right? But whatever, doesn't matter. This is just a retrospective blog post. All right. Retrospective. A quick history refresher. A little over a year and a half ago, we announced that we'd be transitioning from the long-standing Living World model to smaller, more frequent annual expansion releases. This was a significant shift, but the new direction was born out of an examination of the pain points experienced by our players and our developers. The reasons we laid out for this change and what we hope to achieve by it were simple but deeply important. Deliver content updates in a more consistent and timely manner, provide better support for the systems and game modes that make up the Guild Wars 2 experience, enable ArenaNet employees to enjoy a better work-life balance. So it's really funny because actually, if you guys watched last night's stream was just a chill stream. We just hung out. I was leveling like a character, and we were just talking about all things ArenaNet and the new expansion and features and what we'd like to see with the game and yada yada yada, right? But in the blog post that I pulled up, which was from last like October or something, they had literally these two things that they talked about in that blog post, okay? So, and in that same, yesterday in the stream, I talked about how they've been pretty consistent on, like, maybe not timely manner, but they've been pretty consistent on content updates. I mean, even crappy Icebrood Saga had like consistent updates all the time, you know. End of Dragons was a little iffy because, you know, Gyaladelph, we had to like we got Gyaladelph and it was just like, okay, it's an okay release or whatever. There's nothing like to write home about, but it was kind of nice to get some, you know, get into it with the Oni and yada yada and see more of the Jade Sea and that stuff, you know. But then the second release after that was like super disappointing, only for us to switch over to a different release model. And it's like, okay, you've been consistent on releasing updates. The timeliness has been a little iffy because sometimes they do 3 months, sometimes they do 4 months, where they say it's 3 months and then it's 4 months, something like that. So the timely manner, I do like that, and I think one thing they have, and I didn't talk about this yesterday, but one thing that I think they really did meet was the timeliness of it, because they set themselves specific a specific release cadence that's set in the vault, right? And we can see how many days. And they did have to change it for the last release. They had to push it back 1 week. But other than that, they've been pretty consistent on it. So that is nice. But again, this is pretty vague. And, I mean, we don't know how the problem is that the new expansion releases, right? The new model of it. We don't know how that's affecting their work environment, right? That's the thing. ArenaNet always, or not always, but has recently, as of recent years, claimed so much transparency. But if you're not telling us really what's going on in the background, you're not really being transparent. You're just kind of laying out that, oh yeah, this is better for us, and it's like, okay, but in what way is it better for you? Anyways, provide better support for the systems and game modes. That was another one they talked about. It's interesting to think about because, again, no specifics. So, the World vs. World thing has been a complete mess because it's been all over the place. The beta events have been kind of messy to the point where one of them they had to shut down immediately. And yes, we are going into a permanent beta for the World vs. World restructuring, but still, it's been all over the place. Other game modes haven't been supported. So I'm not quite sure. The only game mode that's been seriously supported recently has been a PvE. Like I said, we have the restructuring betas going on, but that doesn't mean you're really support. To me, that's not really supporting anything. They have done some updates here and there, but when someone says to me, we want to support game modes or whatever, then I want to see a serious effort made towards that. And I feel who knows how much effort goes into the whole World vs. World restructuring, but I can't claim that it's going to be a lot of effort because ArenaNet doesn't tell us how much effort really goes into all of that. Again, there's no transparency. We don't really know how much of their workforce is actually actively working on that World vs. World restructuring. Is it a huge part of the team that's really sitting there every day trying to figure out the spaghetti code of making this work? Or is it a team of 3 people that kind of comes in every day and just works on it a little bit beside working on the new expansion or something, right? We don't really know how this is, but it is one of the things where I'm yes, we have seen some quality of life stuff, which I think that's kind of what they're talking about when they're talking about supporting systems. But game modes, I want to say it feels a little lackluster because PvP hasn't seen a lot of updates, and even the World vs. World updates we have seen have been kind of whatever. Some of the changes they have done have been questionable, and some of them have been just kind of not groundbreaking. I mean, it's not oh my god, this is crazy, oh my god, we're getting a new map for World vs. World or something. It hasn't been anything like that. Enable ArenaNet employees to enjoy a better work-life balance. Again, this goes into transparency. We don't know what a day in the life of an ArenaNet employee is like, so I don't know how, I hate that they're using this as a point of this is what we're trying to achieve with the model, when we don't know what that even entails. We don't know from the old model to the new model what has changed for an ArenaNet employee. Because again, we have no transparency, we don't know anything that they're working on, we don't know what each individual person does, which, maybe we don't need to know, but in the sense of you're claiming transparency, maybe you should tell us a little bit about that, but that's okay. Maybe they're gonna give us more details later. Not sure, but we have a lot more to go through. And so there's features and stuff. So let's kind of go on, but they have been talking about these things. This is something they have been talking about. You guys can be your own judge. I mean, for some of you, you might say, yep, my favorite game modes have been supported, and this is really great, and the systems in place are really, really nice, and I loved everything about it, and that's totally fine. I'm not here to tell you how to think. So if that's how you feel, that is totally valid, and that's okay. For me personally, I think, Cat, please. No, please, over there. Sit right there. You don't need to sit there. Okay. Sorry about that. Cat likes to go on adventures right on my desk. And yeah, but for me personally, I don't think these things have hit in this first expansion. Maybe in the next expansion, but I feel some of these things are okay, whatever, right? I don't know. This kind of doesn't mean much to me. And this has been kind of and this was already for me there. That was kind of there already for me. So I don't know. Anyways. Now that we've completed a full expansion release cycle, I can confidently say that we've made significant strides towards these goals. But as with all things, there's room for improvement, both in terms of the content we deliver and the process through which we deliver it. For today, I'm going to focus on some of what we've learned on the content side of things. So they kind of lay out, this was the goal of what they wanted to kind of do with the expansion. And then now he's going to go through and kind of talk about how this has, whether this has worked or not. And then we can kind of see. So, I gave you guys my opinion on what I think so far, but let's go through it. The story. The conclusion of the Elder Dragon saga, in Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons, presented us with a unique opportunity to delve into a different kind of storytelling. We aim to focus on deeper narratives grounded in the characters and circumstances around the player character. However, with Secrets of the Obscure, our ambition led us to take on a broader scope than was feasible. This is really good. I like that they have realized that because before Secrets of the Obscure, remember before Secrets of the Obscure came out, they talked about how they would like to tell like smaller stories on a smaller scope, but they actually, I think, went over their they went too far with it, right? Secrets of the Obscure again had like world-ending events, and it was just like a huge scope of like the things that were happening. And they realize, which is good. I like people that can say, you know what, this is bigger than what we could have managed in that 1 year, right? So that was good. We introduced a lot of new characters, and the plot was too complex for what can be reasonably handled within an annual expansion. Yep. I think we can all agree on that. I think most of the player base has that is one of the big things that they've kind of talked about, and that is good that they have realized this. So I like that there is some realization and some understanding there. This left some characters' interactions feeling rushed and story threads unexplored. More isn't always better. True. And we and that's the thing. We as the player base have been asking for a smaller story. We wanted more isolated little stories here and there. ArenaNet were the ones that couldn't keep the story like contained in a smaller thing. They wanted to go, So not that I'm blaming one side or the other, but it's really funny that they've realized that is solely a mistake on their part, right? So, and it's not something that we even asked for as the player base. We learned a lot from this experience and have a much greater understanding of story scale within our new release structure. For our next expansion, we're going to tell a more grounded story set in a new region of Tyria with more of a focus on local threats and the global conversation around these threats. Okay. That's very nice. So, new region, I mean, we kind of know Janthier, right? That's like kind of what the hints that we have been getting. And I will tell you guys, there's actually more hints to that later on in the blog post. And I will tell you guys why, but when we get to it. But yeah, so it's kind of nice. I like the idea of having local threats. It's something that I think... I don't know, it's something that I feel like is more interesting, kind of to go, it's something where, let's step away from this, like, world-ending thing, and just kind of, like, have these isolated, really, like, meet some characters, and really get to know them, and kind of, like, just have a smaller group of people that we kind of deal with. I don't know, it just sounds more immersive and interesting to me at this current point. Tyria, despite all of its challenges, has continued to stir. While we leave Nias and the Cryptus to enjoy their newfound freedom, the story will pick up on some threats started in Secrets of the Obscure, in Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure. Continuing with the Astral Ward arc, there are more ambiguity in their relationship to Tyria. So that's interesting, right? So we've had discussions on this for a while now, where some people in the community have been talking about, well, maybe we're not leaving the Astral Ward behind. My question is, and it seems like they were right on, which is awesome, right? I love that, because we have some really interesting characters in the Astral Ward. I talked about it yesterday. I mean, it's like they touch on all 5 elder races, and we kind of there's so much still to explore with all of the wizards of the Wizards Court, like including Iskaran, and even Zoja. Like maybe Zoja's gonna keep on being in the story or whatever. Like we don't know. The interesting part for me will be to see how they connect the two things, right? Is it gonna feel strange for someone that hasn't played Secrets of the Obscure, right? That's a separate expansion. We're not talking about a living world that's included with the expansion or something. We're talking about a new expansion. So and we've never had it where one expansion moves to another expansion and it has characters that carry over from that. Like we've had Dragon's Watch, but they've been there since season 1, right? We have Destiny's Edge, and they've been there since the personal story. And those things are like free to play content now. I mean, season 1 finally now has been kind of made available again, but these characters have kind of been with us through the whole journey. And most players will have encountered them at some point or another before the expansions kind of came out. But with Secrets of the Obscure, the Astral Ward, and the Wizard's Court, like those characters, like, they just appeared in this last expansion, and so someone that's coming to the game and they're like, oh, well, I want to get, Guild Wars 2 Janthier Wilds, I don't want to get Secrets of the Obscure, and they're playing the story, and then they're kind of like, okay, well, I don't know any of these characters. Like, how is ArenaNet gonna kind of work those characters into the story without making new players or players that maybe haven't played Secrets of the Obscure kind of feel like they really missed out on some like huge stuff or whatever, or they're not even gonna try. Maybe they're gonna go full in on and have the commander act like full on, like we know this person and we're picking up where we left off, and screw to the people that haven't played Secrets of the Obscure. So go play it now if you want to know what's going on. I mean, they could do that as well, right? But I don't know what the sensible thing would be to do, right? I don't know. Obviously, I'm just happy that we're getting to see more of the Astral Ward. I love that, and kind of like their relationship to Tyria. Like, that's really interesting to me. Map design. In Secrets of the Obscure, we delivered 3 new open world maps. The first 2, Omnitas and Skywatch Archipelago, came with the expansion's launch in August 2023. The third map, Inner Nios, was released with the first quarterly update in November 2023, and was then expanded on in our second and third quarterly updates with new playable space and event content. After extensive adventuring in Inner Nios in recent months, it's clear that using a single map as the main focal point for 3 releases is not ideal for a player or developer standpoint. Our decision to do so originally stemmed from production constraints and overlapping development timelines between expansions, but we've since identified some ways to migrate these issues, both in terms of release structure and process improvements. So I'm gonna skip over this because that's just kind of like, yep, that's exactly what it was. But here, there's some really interesting stuff in here. So it's clear that using a single map as the main focal point for 3 releases is not ideal for a player or developer standpoint. So what they're telling us is pretty much that they have seen the feedback of the players kind of complaining that we only get one map and it's only going to be like small spaces each every 3 months that is released. And the third piece that we got is like not even like, that's just for the meta event. There's nothing else to do there, right? So getting like 2 pieces of the map where things are happening, but it's not, it's just small, and it feels like the overarching story doesn't like the story doesn't really connect with the location, because they're talking about this war that's happening when we're running around the map, and there's not like, we're kind of just like, oh, doing an event here and freeing some cryptos here and like destroying this over here and destroying that over here and defending things, but it's not like an active war. Like, it's not like, oh my god, there's battles happening everywhere and whatever, there's not like 2 different teams of cryptas like fighting each other, like opposing forces of the cryptas and stuff. Like, we don't see really any of that happening. So because, and we talked about this yesterday, like in the story they talk about, General Nefes is talking about how he he says that they're like stretched thin because they have like dozens of points at the front line where they're fighting off the enemies, and it's like, where is this happening in Nios? Because it sure as hell isn't happening on the map that I'm playing, So I think they've realized that from the player standpoint, but I also think there's something interesting here when they're talking about the developer standpoint. So I guess what they're saying is that the story that they were trying to tell, they couldn't really fit into the map because the map was probably too small for them to do the things that the story was talking about, right? So the thing was that they were like, okay, well, we want to have the Civil War in the story, but then we have this map and we don't really know how to convey this story in the map. And that's kind of where maybe the the story developers and the map developers like didn't really connect, and that goes to like the production constraints and overlapping development times between expansions. Because I talked about this yesterday, they kind of the problem was that the problem that I had was that when the initial Secrets of the Obscure came out, the initial launch of it, they already talked about, like, shortly after, like a week after, they had a blog post about, oh, everything is going great and we're already working on the next expansion, right? And it's like, whoa, okay. So they must be very confident in their next 3 releases that are coming before this next expansion, because if they're already working on the next expansion, which, you know, is normal to do, right? I understand that, but I'm saying, like, they're already announcing, like, hey, we're full on going, like, ham on this next expansion. That kind of must mean that the next 3 releases that are coming out are, like, well underway and should be, like, close to being done, only for them to come out and be super lackluster, right? And I think there's, like, I talked about how I think that, you know, Team A and Team B, I kept talking about this, right? And I keep talking about it, where I think Team A, with the senior developers and like a majority of the staff or whatever, worked on the initial release of Secrets of the Obscure, and then it took the rest of the staff, which are new people, maybe inexperienced, you know, maybe, you know, interns. I made the joke of interns or whatever, but, you know, they worked on the post initial releases, right? The 3 releases in iOS that we got, and having Team A in the meantime work on the next initial release. So that's why Team A did such a great job and Team B didn't do a great job, because they didn't know really how to handle the story that they were handed or something. That's kind of what it felt like, and it seems like they're not necessarily confirming that, but it does sound that there's something going on, overlapping development timelines between, and we've since identified some ways to mitigate those issues, both in terms of release structure and process improvement. So it sounds like that they kind of realized that this was happening, and that they, you know, that there was like, you know, overlapping the 2 things, that, you know, they probably realized, hey, we kind of have to finish like one thing first before we do another. So it's kind of good that they're giving us, again, I would like to see more specifics on this. It's too broad and too vague of a statement to really, like, give me an example. Give me an example of where you saw production constraints and overlapping development timelines between expansions. Give me an example. You know, talk about something very specific where you can say, this, for example, like, we wanted to do this with the story, but then we had to cut this out because this was going on, or we wanted to do this in the map, but we realized that our map artists were busy already working on the next expansions, and so we kind of had to cut the map shorter, or we couldn't add the things that we wanted to add or something. Give us like more specifics. I need, you know, it's like, in the sense of transparency, you have to be a little bit more specific. So while I do like this, I do wish for some more details. But for our next expansion, our first 2 maps will be released at the expansion's launch, just as they did in Secrets of the Obscure. However, the final map will arrive in the 2nd quarterly update and be expanded upon in the 3rd, meaning it will be expanded on for 2 total releases, like Beer Marches and Drizzlewood Coast. Okay, not only does this give our team a bit more time to develop the 3rd map, okay, I do see the point there, it also means that the story during the next expansion cycle will better leverage all 3 maps and take you back to familiar areas from your past adventures. While the first quarterly release of the expansion launch won't include the 3rd open world map of the expansion as it did with Secrets of the Obscure, there will be plenty of new content to keep you busy in that time frame, in terms of story, open world content, and encounters. I know that's a little vague. Again, check back in the next week. Everything is a little vague with you guys. But rest assured, the first quarterly release will include something really exciting that players have been requesting for over 5 years. So 5 years was what? 2019, that was like season 4, right? Yeah, season 4. So what's something that people have been asking for since season 4? Let's talk about that. Let's kind of go through some of this first before we talk about that. For our next expansion, our first 2 maps will be released at the expansion's launch. as it did. However, the second will be released. So, I one thing that I really hate is that they're using Drizzlewood Coast and BR Marches as their example, because granted, whether you like those maps or not, they were released during the worst time of Guild Wars 2, like arguably the worst time of Guild Wars 2, Icewood Saga, right? And Drizzlewood Coast, while Drizzlewood Coast is fun to kind of go through, it is such a meta-focused map that it kind of loses a lot of its meaning. It could be anywhere in the world and it wouldn't matter, right? It could be anywhere in the Shiver Peak Mountains. You could have a empty snowfield with the Frost Citadel at the end, and all these events on the way there, and that would have, the map itself didn't have an impact at all, like Drizzlewood Coast, right? There was no impact made. None of the little outposts and things were interesting because they were just taken over by Char anyway. So it didn't really matter where we went because there was no ambient dialogue that even talked about the areas, how they were affected by the war or what happened there beforehand or anything like that. We did get the little Tengu village in Drizzlewood Coast that was destroyed, but again, we see one NPC that kind of comes to the Eye of the North, and that's it. We don't really engage much with what's happening on the map. BR Marches, the first part I kind of liked. It was, again, the first part of BR Marches was what I like to call a theme park map, where certain areas of the map were certain things and they were kind of like clearly divided. And I'm not a huge fan of theme park maps. It was done in a, I think BR March is one of the better examples of a theme park map, but it still kind of felt like all over the place. And again, it was very like meta focused, and again, the location didn't really matter that much because we just had like the second half had like stranded Kodan, and they could have been stranded anywhere. And then we had like these random temples of the spirits that have been there, but they, it just, I feel like these are really bad examples to use. So because those releases weren't like the best in my opinion. While the Bureau Marches releases were kind of good, and I did like the story of it. Especially the first part of it, of the story of BR Marches, I thought was really, really cool. But Drizzlewood Coast, like, it's a weird, because if you're telling me the third map is going to be another Drizzlewood Coast, I'm going to be not excited for it, right? So you're kind of setting a precedence of, like, we're using this as an example, but that, it doesn't mean that that's what they're doing, right? But it's just highlighting those two maps. I'm like, shouldn't have said that. It kind of sets a negative, like, there's like this weird thing in my head. But nonetheless, so they want to have the first. So what they're saying here is they want to give their developers more time to work on the third map, which is nice, which means we're going to get a larger map than Nios, right? And get maybe more fleshed out stuff, maybe more interactions with NPCs and like more lore. There was a lot of like, Nios was lacking sorely in like a lot of like cool lore stuff, which the initial release of Secrets of the Obscure did really well. There was a lot of really cool lore, stories, achievements. We did get some of those in Nios, but they were, I feel like, pretty lackluster for the location that we're going to. I felt like there should have been a lot more. So I guess they can balance that a little bit better, which is nice. And then they're telling us that the first release that's going to come out is going to take place in those two maps that we already had, which is great because it felt like Skywatch Archipelago specifically felt very much like we kind of were breezing through it and it didn't really mean anything, and then by the time we get to Wizard's Tower, we've already forgotten about the fractals, right? Like, think about the story of Secrets of the Obscure. Like, once you get to the tower and you take the tower back over, yes, they do take refugees to the tower from the fractals, but we kind of like stop talking about the fractals, right? And it would be nice to, let's say we had the first release, the first Nios release, the first post the initial release, right? The quarterly update, take place on those maps. They could have maybe kind of delved a little bit further into those things of like how they're dealing with the fractals and what's happening in Omnitas, and like kind of explore that a little bit more. And that would have given them more freedom of like, because these maps are already fleshed out. There's already stuff happening. You're just adding new things to it. So I like that. It's really cool. So, and they're talking about in terms of story, open world content, and encounters. So I think they want to do, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be adding new events and adventures like they did with Nios, right? And Nios, they did the very last quarterly release. They added new adventures and new events and stuff like that, like, going on. And I think they're probably planning on doing the same thing. So we're getting the initial, and I love that because at some point, I want to say at some point I have talked about this, where I think this was during Secrets of the Obscure, where I said, we have the initial maps now, and then the quarterly, I think my prediction or something was that the first quarterly release would be exactly that. They would go back to those maps before we go to Nios or something, and maybe maybe add new things like adventures and stuff in there. And they did that with Nios, which was really nice. So I guess they're kind of doing the same thing, kind of updating the maps with new things and adding those, and making them like really fluff them up and add new content and make them really feel like significant, and then go into the next map and really go for 2 releases ham on the thing. My thing is, and they haven't touched on this, this is the story and the map design. My thing to ArenaNet, if anyone is listening there, right? The one of the things, and they didn't talk about this, and I don't think that's I think that's kind of, maybe they missed that. Maybe they didn't, I don't know. But the problem also, one of the big problems that I had is that the 2 stories felt very disconnected. The story of the Wizard's Tower, the Astro Ward, Omnitas, Skywatch Archipelago felt so disconnected from the Nios, the Cryptus, that, right? They like that story. Like, they felt so disconnected. They didn't really weave together very well, because we get this whole idea of the civil war and Petha wanting to take over as king of the Cryptus at the very, 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 very end, in the very last instance of Secrets of the Obscure, having no prior thing anywhere. Yes, she betrayed Ceres, but other than that, we didn't get any indication of this happening, and it just feels very like, it felt very disconnected. So my hope is that the third map integrates really well with the initial releases of it, because if we're only getting 2 imagine only getting 2 releases in Nios, that would have been awful. That would have been even more awful, because it's even more disconnected. Like, they had at least 3 releases for Nios, which they were able to kind of work on it. But if we only get 2 in the new map, and it's not connected as well, like woven into the story as well, then it's gonna feel like lackluster again, right? Like, it's gonna feel like a Giala Delve all over again, like exactly like that. You know what I mean? Like, because we're going into the new map, and it's gonna be a new story, but it's gonna be super lackluster and kind of just like fizzle out with just no bravado at all. Like, it's just kind of like whatever. So that is my recommendation. Like, make sure that those stories are connected and they feel like that you understand, that you see these struggles and the things that we're dealing with and the story threads early on in the new expansion, that those threads get dealt with in the new map later on, right? Like, we kind of have these connecting story threads. So and then down here they talk about players have been requesting for over 5 years. So I've been kind of thinking about this. So I guess because recently Grouch went on one of the social medias or something, forum, Reddit, somewhere, I don't remember, X, I don't remember where it was, but he talked about how or maybe it was on the blog post even, I don't remember, but he talked about how they have something exciting planned for endgame PvE content. And then now he's talking about something that people have been requesting for 5 years. Like, 5 years, wasn't 5 years the last raid wing that was released or something like that? Like, doesn't that fit? Because like season 4 was like the last raid wing that we got. And would that be like, would that match with what people have been, because a lot of people have been requesting more raids for a long time, and if we're talking about like endgame PvE content, then that would align. So that would kind of that would mean we're getting a new raid wing, guys. I don't know how exciting that is for you guys. I'm not a raider. I don't know, but Yeah, I know that the raiding I mean, I have some friends that do raid all the time every week, so I'm sure they'll be excited about that. So all right. So features. Features are always a great subject to talk about with Guild Wars 2 because I feel like feature-wise, ArenaNet does really well lots of times, and other times not so much. But I think most of the time when they get really innovative and they have like a good idea, like the mount system, like how to implement the mount system, it comes out like so good. It's like even the gliding I feel like is so good because they integrated it so naturally into the game that it feels like it's always been a part of the game, and I really like that. So that's very nice. Anyways, so MMOs are made up of numerous gameplay systems and content types, each with a different role to play in the game experience. As games go on, they tend to accumulate more and more systems and features from expansions and the like, which is fine if there's effort put into maintaining and updating those systems. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly it, right? You keep adding systems into the game, but you have to maintain them too. You have to update them. So what exactly is he talking about? Let's see. Looking back over the game's history, I think this maintenance and upkeep is one of the areas where we've fallen short, at times even falling into a trap, releasing new features for the sake of releasing new features, even if they overlap with something that already exists. What do they mean by that? For the sake of releasing new features for the sake of releasing new features, even if they overlap with something that already exists? Like what? That's an interesting... See, again, I need more specifics. What do they mean by that? But yeah, I do agree. Like, you need to have maintenance and upkeep on some of the systems, some of the things. This is something we've been referring to internally as putting a hat on a hat. Okay. Over the last 2 years, we've put much more of a focus on upkeep and iteration of systems and avoiding unnecessary bloat where possible. We put more of a focus on maintaining live game systems, and with Secrets of the Obscure, we even went to the extent of entirely reworking existing features to make room for more modernized solutions. The Wizard's Vault is a good example of this. Thank you. We're getting examples. I'm like, again, you're giving all of this, and you're not giving us any concrete info. Be more specific. The Wizard's Vault is a good example of the strategy working out well for us. Yes, it has. I agree. Great example. Love it. Thank you. Can I get more of this? And you can expect to see a new system being introduced in Expansion 5 that adds a meaningful new way to spend your time in Guild Wars 2 while using this as an opportunity to greatly improve the player experience with related existing game systems. And once again, you're not giving us any specifics, so I hope next week you're giving us something specific, because this means nothing to me. While I am excited, this is not to say that I'm not excited for a system like the Vault, right? I think it's a great system. I've been a huge fan of the Vault because that's kind of like exactly up my alley, like being very casual in the way that I consume the game, but still getting rewards out of it. It's great. It's fantastic. I love it. So that we're getting another meaningful way to spend your time in Guild Wars 2, okay, great, while using this opportunity to greatly improve the player experience with related existing game systems. So I have a feeling, if I were to theorize, if someone were to be like, okay, what do you think they mean by this? So my theory would be that they're probably, maybe, and just maybe, they might utilize the mounts and the adventure system in a more meaningful way. Meaning that maybe they're gonna give us more adventures with the mounts. So in system, because the mount system is one of those systems that has been received so well, and it's one of the things that whenever I see an ad for Guild Wars 2, that's always what they point out. They always point out their mounts. It's like the one thing that I see in all the Guild Wars 2 ads. It's always about the mounts. So that is something they're highly proud of, which they should be, because it is one of the best mount systems. I mean, one of the best mount system I've ever seen in an MMO. I don't know. I haven't played all the MMOs in the world. I'm sure there's probably some that have a better system, but I love the mount system. And we just talked about it yesterday because we talked about how Secrets of the Obscure was so sky scale focused, and we had adventures that just kind of dealt with like flying on your sky scale and firing stuff, on your sky scale and that sort of stuff. But it would be interesting to maybe put a bigger focus on some other mounts and have those become important, you know? So that would be an interesting way of having like, oh, you can do, you can have a skimmer race that goes underwater, right? And you can only do that on a skimmer, but actually have maybe some kind of tab in the vault or something where you can get like specific rewards for doing something, or you know, have the new system kind of deals with that, where you have adventures and events that deal with using your mounts and using specific mounts to do specific adventures and uh, get rewards out of that. Like, that would be my guess, maybe, you know? Overall, we were a bit conservative with features for Seekers of the Obscure, trying to strike the right balance between scope, schedule, and risk while navigating a new content structure. We've ironed out a lot of kinks here, and it's allowed us to be a bit more ambitious with our next expansions. Details. Details. You're not giving us any details. What does this mean? How have you struck the right balance? Okay, like how, like, we've ironed out a lot of the kinks here. How? In what way have you realized that the scope, schedule, and risk was like, maybe, you know, you're trying to strike a balance between while navigating new content structure? Like, how have you worked that out? I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Because it's like, this entire thing, if that didn't exist in the blog post, it wouldn't change a damn thing, because you're not giving us any details. You're not telling us anything. You're just saying, yeah, we figured it out. Okay, how? Tell me how. How have you figured it out? Tell me more details. Give me a little example of something where you're like, this and this. Okay, this we tried to do and it didn't really work out, and so we're gonna be maybe doing it this way. Give us an example of something maybe that doesn't even exist in game, and use it, maybe a real life example of like, oh, okay, well, if a person does something like this and it doesn't really work out, they might change it to something like this, and it's like, oh, okay, so we can kind of maybe draw a parallel and we can maybe understand, oh, okay, so this is maybe how they have changed some of the systems or the things that they approached, or these kinks that they have worked out, right? Again, I hate that. No details. Whatever. We're moving on. Such a tease. So now we get into the fun part, guys. You know, you've been hanging out for this long, I hope, for 42 minutes. But hopefully, yeah, so let's get to the good stuff. We've closed one of our recent blogs, which introduced the cosmetic extraction features, blah, 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 that have gone into game development, blah, 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 with a screenshot preview of an area you'll discover in our next expansion. We thought today would be a fun opportunity to build on that, so I'll leave you with an additional environment preview. And then we get pretty much everything they have released with Seekers of the Obscure, and they're pretty much telling us right here that we will not see the next expansion until August. I think August, like right around the birthday, like August 20 something. I think that's when we can expect the next expansion, guys. I think so. June and July, we have a couple of festivals coming up. Dragon Bash is kind of fun. Festival of the Four Winds is so. You know, I love the area for it or whatever, but yeah, they're kind of giving us you know, this is all the things we have done, and then, you know, we're going in, and this is the next stuff that's coming out. So and on behalf of ArenaNet, I want to express we have such a dedicated community behind us. Thank you for reading. I can't believe you're just a week away from announcing what's next. So let's watch this video, guys. I don't have the sound up for me. If you guys can hear it, good for you. I don't think there's anything interesting. Why is this in low definition? Please, HD. Thank you. My God. All right, so it's weird that they have this up there. I don't understand that, but I guess they must have. So here's the big reveal, guys. We're getting underwater weapons on land. This is a spear. This Norn lady is wielding a spear, and we're getting a preview of the next area of the Janthier Wilds. Okay, and they're giving us a very long pan, very long something. Expansion reveal June 4th. How are they revealing it? I think they're gonna do like they did with Secrets of the Obscure. They're probably gonna do blog posts and stuff like that. But let's kind of look at some of the stuff. So first of all, the big thing, right, is underwater weapons. We've been asking for this forever. People have been asking for this forever because ArenaNet kind of abandoned underwater content, which is fine, right? it's whatever. You're giving us other content, you're kind of leaving it behind. It's okay. Understand. Maybe it's out of your scope. You know, one of the things, like they could have used that as an example, you know, like earlier where they talked about like the scope of things, where they could have said, well, you know, one of the things that we kind of early on abandoned in the Guild Wars 2 development was like doing more underwater content because we realized that it's out of our scope for our team to do meaningful updates and balances and do things underwater, and maybe not all players would have appreciated putting all that effort into it because they don't like underwater, and that's why we moved on from it. Like something like that would have been really nice. Anyways, so we're getting underwater weapons on land, guys. We're getting spears, tridents, harpoon guns, okay? Like, fantastic. I'm so excited. We just talked about this yesterday. This is gonna be the new weapons that we're getting. So I guess everyone, I guess one of the weapons is gonna come on land. Is it one of the weapons or all the weapons going to come on land, right? Because there's certain classes that can only use one weapon, like the Elementalist can only use the Trident underwater. So it's like, are they, you know, like, are some classes going to get more weapons to use, right? So, or are they going to designate each profession to getting one of their underwater weapons as they're now taking it on land, right? It would kind of feel funky to say, like, the warrior, right? The warrior can use a spear and a harpoon gun, and they're just gonna say, well, you're only gonna be able to take the spear on land with you. Like, this is happening right here. That she's probably a warrior, I don't know, but she's taking the spear on land, but the harpoon gun is gonna be in the water, right? So we're gonna have to really see next week what this means. What weapons are gonna come on land? I mean, obviously it's gonna be all three of them, I think. But it's going to be, I'm guessing probably each profession is going to get one weapon that's going to come on land. What is the one that maybe I'm looking for the most? Like I just said, warrior spear. If harpoon gun, not so exciting because, you know, rifle kind of sucks right now. So getting like a second crappy rifle, you know, it's like, I don't know, it kind of feels bad. Like I'd rather have them update rifle and leave harpoon gun underwater, because those are very similar in the sense of, you know, how the animations work and stuff like that, and do the spear on land and have it be like a one-handed. People talked about this where it's like one-handed. If it's a one-handed spear, it should be you know, you can put a shield in your hand. It should be long-range weapon. Or if you're doing a two-handed spear, have it function as a you know, as a like a melee weapon. But I will tell you guys, so do you guys see this? Do you guys see the way she's holding that spear on land? This is obviously not the final thing, but do you see what this looks like to me? She's not holding that in two hands. This is not a two-handed spear, okay? Like underwater, she might wield that in two hands, right? No, underwater actually not. Underwater, you actually hold your spear in one hand, you kind of like float around or whatever. I think, right? That's how it works. But this looks to me like the way her body stance is, the way her body is positioned, it looks to me like she would be holding something in the other hand, right? Because if we're having a dual-handed spear, she would be holding it in both hands probably. However, she would hold it like forward or to the side, or even like kind of, you know, like casually like on the side. But it looks like her other hand would be holding something. They just don't have anything equipped in the other hand. So I could see like a shield being equipped there. So we get like a sword and like a spear and shield kind of thing. So I have a feeling that the spear is going to be one-handed. A main hand spear. That's just kind of my theory. You guys tell me what you think. But interesting. Underwater weapons. Woo! I'm so excited, guys. Finally. The prices, apparently, I just checked right before I started recording this. But prices of the legendary underwater weapons have already gone through the roof. They're going like way up, which is, there's only 3 of them as far as I understand it. Like each one of the weapons has one legendary you know, weapon or whatever. Like there's a legendary harpoon gun, a legendary trident, and a legendary spear. The legendary trident is really cool. It's like these eels or whatever that are like kind of like moving. Really like that one. That's probably going to be one that I'm working on. I'm kind of excited to see Elementalist trident on land with like having 20 different weapon skills to use. That's gonna be super exciting. Maybe it's just a main hand trident, and we only get like 3 skills. But nonetheless, I'm very excited to see. Those are probably the 2: spear for warrior, and you know, if it's spear, whatever underwater weapon for warrior, and trident for elementalist. Oh, and then maybe if we have trident for revenant. You know, like, I think the trident on Revenant is a really cool weapon because you summon all these orbs underwater and you shoot them out and stuff, and it's like this long-range weapon. Maybe we're getting that. Maybe we're getting a trident on land for the Revenant with like a long-range mist mage kind of gameplay. That would be super exciting, and I think that would probably bump Revenant up to be, if not my new main, one of my new mains. Because I'm playing a lot right now. But anyways, so let's go further. I'm very excited for these weapons, guys. I'm very excited. I can't wait for next week. Super exciting. So then we get kind of this overview, and I can't hear the music. It's probably really loud. I'm going to turn the music down. I'm sorry if you guys had this earlier. But they kind of pan over the map, right? So this is... Ooh, I wanted to stop right before. There. That's great. That looks good. So... okay, let's talk about this picture. Let's talk about what's happening here. Let's talk about it. So this, again, we talked about a lot about foliages, right? We talked about like trees and stuff. Again, right on with the combination of drizzlewood, because you have piney trees here, okay, which you kind of see a little bit when she gets out of the water, actually, right here. See piney trees, okay? But then you also have the harvest forest, the amber colored, the brown, golden, red, whatever, right? You kind of have that a little bit too. So this looks to be... I have a feeling that this is right north of Divinity's Reach, okay? So let me go real quick, and we're going to swap back and forth here. Hello? Hello? There it is. Let's deactivate that. Let's go in-game. In-game. So, oh, I will be kicked if I don't move. Alright, well, let's move for 1 second, and that should be okay, right? I was gonna cast a skill. It should be okay. Okay. Anywho. So, we're moving over here. So, my feeling is that this little village that we're seeing is probably, like, right over here, right? Because this is, like, the Maguma Wastes over here. And this is very rocky, and we're looking at like a rocky waterfall, right? So maybe have the delta be like elevated on a plateau, and then it runs into a waterfall right to Divinity's Reach. So I have a feeling we're right over here somewhere, right? This is where the river is. I have a feeling we're like, the map is probably going to be like right here or something. And we're like right over here. Like she's coming out of the water and she's like standing there and she's looking at the village where the waterfall is kind of like coming down. That would be my guess. I think that's probably like the area that I would suspect to be where this was taken. So that's probably part of the map, of the Delta map that we have like seen and heard about or whatever. So definitely indicating that we are going north. Probably, is there a gate here? Is there a gate that leads outward? Because I know there's a gate on the other side for Lake Doric, right? There's no gate here, guys. There's a gate here, right? There's a gate here. Let's look at it for a second. I want to make sure that yeah, so there's a gate here. Are we gonna get a gate here or no? Or maybe there is there a gate here? There is not. But they can always update it. I mean, they can always add a gate. They can always say like, hey, we're adding a gate or something. But yeah, there's nothing north with a gate. So that's interesting to kind of think about. Yeah, so that's where I'm suspecting that we're going. Now let's talk about the actual buildings. Okay, so we kind of talked about the location. And let's talk about the actual building. Okay, so it's kind of, this is not super high res. ArenaNet is really bad in making like blurry videos. The videos that they release are sometimes so blurry. But this is really interesting because we see these these buildings, these wooden buildings with straw as the like ceiling, right? They have like almost like straw huts, right? But they're made out of like wood. And they're like in different styles, because this is almost like an Asian like or regular roof, and these are like rounded. So we get like two different types of roofs here. With like, see how these houses are like kind of built to get like this whole house kind of has these different roofs, and it kind of like mingled together with like a chimney right there and stuff. Like, this is super interesting because for various reasons. So we're talking about like North Krita, and we might talk about, you know, we might be talking about being away from, you know, even though it is in the back of Divinity's Reach, we might be far enough away from, like, these people might be removed enough from Divinity's Reach. Or if we're going, I mean, if we're going with the theory that we are seeing the Isles of Janthier. Oh, and you guys can't see that because I'm drawing the map. So if the theory is correct that we are going to the Isles of Janthier, maybe we're not in this map. Even though the foliage, like I said, it does align, because we see a little bit of this and we see a little bit of that. And it's next to a river, which, you know, and water, which would indicate that we're probably somewhere right over here. But they could be like, what if some of these people, you know, yes, Queensdale and, you know, all of these places have kind of advanced over the last 250 years. What if these people that are living back here, they like don't want to have anything to do with the Queen and her garbage and the Krita of today, and they kind of, for the last 250 years, they've kind of lived in this mountainous region, in this hilly region, you know, far away from prying eyes, and they've been left alone there. And they kind of have this village that's secluded in this river, like behind Divinity's Reach, but there's no gates, so you don't have any traffic going out. You have traffic going out to Lake Doric, which for a long time had a dam right here, so, you know, no one would go that way, right? And then it would end into the forest up there where there wasn't a lot of people, or up here, or somewhere around here, whatever. You know, so, you know, we had traffic going out this way, but we'd never had traffic go behind the dams, right? Like, all of this might be very, you know, held back, and like they might not see a lot of visitors, like people going out, because if people are coming in and out of Divinity's Reach, they're doing it through the front gate, or perhaps through the Lake Doric gate, right? So that is the two ways that you would travel in and out of Divinity's Reach, beside of course a Sur gate, but you know, talking about physically traveling there. So these people are removed, and why do I think that, right? So you could be like, okay, well, what's the whole point of you saying that, right? What's the point of you bringing this up? Well, let's go, and this is really cool that we're actually doing this. Let's go into recently. So recently, if you guys have watched my streams recently of Guild Wars 1 that I did, we did the factions playthrough, and then I did a map. I went through, and these are like the Guild Wars 1 maps, and you can go through, and we are in Krita right now. We're right outside, this is Lion's Arch in Guild Wars 1. And I was kind of looking at some of the maps, and we were kind of like looking at some of the stuff, and I was talking about them in relation to Guild Wars 2 and so on and so forth. But that's not important for this point that I'm trying to make, because I'm trying to show you guys something very interesting. Because these are the houses of the Critons 250 years ago. This is what the houses looked like, okay? They're stone houses, mind you, but they have straw, like, they have straw on top of them, okay? That looks very reminiscent of the old-timey way that they had their houses when we played Guild Wars 1. Very old-fashioned, very like, you know, and then even this is a great example. See how the house kind of has like different roofs, and there's like, you know, they're kind of like blended together, and they're kind of stacked on top of each other. Like, if you compare this to, you know, to the video, right, and you look at that, that looks very similar to this little house over here, right? Obviously, you know, we're talking about different graphics, and we're talking about 250 years and stuff like that, but this is very similar to how the houses are kind of like, they're kind of stacked on top of each other, with like the roofs kind of like, you know, hanging everywhere, and like, you know, with like staircases around, and like open doors and stuff like that. So could this be like an old location of Critons? Like, you know, is there like a village of Critons that have kind of been traditional, and they haven't moved on in 250 years, and are kind of living there? That would be maybe my guess. There's something else that I want to show you guys. So not just Krita. So Krita is super exciting. Switching over. So Krita is very exciting, you know, to think about, because we are talking about you know, going north of Divinity's Reach towards there. So it would work out in location-wise, and like I said, if these people have been isolated enough, they wouldn't have advanced that much in technology, and they would live in houses like this. Granted, these are stone houses, and not wood houses, but they still have the straw that is on top of it, right? Like, I mean, these are some more of the buildings. We see this is the Ascalonian settlement, actually, so we see a lot of these houses here, and you can kind of see the tents and stuff. But you see, again, you see, like, how these are kind of like, and they're curved a little bit as well. They're not like roundish, but they're kind of like curved a little bit on top. But they have like the same kind of idea, right? It's the same kind of idea of like using straw on top of your house, and I'm sure there's some kind of term for it, and I'm being just ignorant by not knowing what that's called when they have that. But yeah, so this is like a Crichton village. Now there's something else that I want to point out, right? And you guys will be kind of like, I feel like some of you guys will be like maybe questioning my sanity here a little bit, but we are in the this map right here is the Alcasia what is it called? Alcasia Tangle, which is pretty much if you were to look at it in Guild Wars 2's like location, this is the little location, and actually I have the game up. I can show you guys. By hiding that. So that is this location down here, okay? This location right here, this is where the Alcasia Tangle is, okay? And then you have an outpost like way down here, okay? We have rivers running down, okay? So the new map, maybe the new map is like here? Like, I mean, I'm, you know, they talked about the delta, but this is very similar to this, right? So, again, I do want to point it out. I don't think that that's true, but I do want to point out the similarities to how it looks on the world map, because this is, again, one of the things where it's not a delta, but it's just like has a lot of rivers running through it. Okay, so when we go into that, when we go to that location in Guild Wars 1 on the map, right? We see all the river, the water, all of these things, right? This is all filled with water, by the way, guys. But the what? Excuse me. What? Shut up. She woke up from her sleep and just screamed bloody murder. So yeah, but these are like, you know, this is all filled with water in game. And then you have like these weird tangly things and bridges that you can cross. But what is one thing that we kind of find? Oh, we see straw buildings and buildings with, you know, buildings with like oval-shaped straw on top. Okay, let's look at an actual outpost. There's an outpost out here, where look at this. These are actual like wooden, like stone and wooden buildings, again with straw on top of it, in a location that could perhaps be very similar to what we've been looking at. So maybe we're looking at like, you know, because this is also like, again, this is far away from civilization in Guild Wars 1 because there wasn't that much out there. There was Radasum, but the Surin, like the Usura, had just come to the surface. So they're a little bit removed. So I just wanted to point out that similarity. I don't think we're looking at the Alcasia Tangle here. I don't think this is what it is. But the Tarnished Coast has, like, we're kind of seeing, I feel like, a little bit of both of those things, where we see a little bit of Kryta and a little bit of the Tarnished Coast, and we're kind of seeing a mix. And I could totally see, I guess the point is that I could totally see the map kind of incorporating both of those things, right? Because it's north of Kryta, and it's, you know, it could be almost like influenced for the artist, right? It could be like influenced by these locations, right? Both old-timey Kryta as well as the rocky, you know, because we see the Alcasia Tangle is very rocky, and there's a lot of like these rock buildings and stuff. We don't see that much in old-timey Kryta. So it's like a mix of the two, with the buildings kind of looking the same way. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. We're looking at maybe a civilization of people. Maybe these are the Jantherians, you know, the people of Janthier. Maybe they have moved down to the coast. You know, they moved across the bay, and maybe they have like, this is one of their outposts, and they kind of live out here, and maybe this is like their one connection to the regular, because we see like the, you know, staircase going up here and stuff. So it's very interesting. We see these cool colors. This kind of reminds me of like maybe Tengu, because Tengu, specifically the Muguma Tengu, have almost like this colorful bird, like they have a lot of like these types of colors and stuff, even in their like some of the buildings and stuff, I think. So maybe this is like, maybe these are some Tengu people that are out here, like who knows, right? Because Tengu used to be in Kryta very heavily until they all moved to the Dominion of Winds. But it could be that maybe, you know, we have seen Tengu, like I said, Muguma Jungle and stuff. We have seen Tengu that have not made the journey to the Dominion of Winds. So maybe these are some Tengu. Like the interesting part that I love, and as we like kind of, you know, we can kind of watch this town again, there's no people. They don't show us any people. There's no like person like walking across, or merchant standing here or back here. Like I feel like that would be like where a merchant would be, right down here or something. We don't see any of that. We don't see any people, right? We just see the lady come on land with her spear in hand, but that's it. That's all we see. So it's very interesting. I think yeah, so I'm very very excited, guys. I'm super stoked. I think this is going to be very exciting and very fun and very yeah, this is great. Like I'm like specifically location and story wise, I'm very excited. And the underwater weapons coming on land, and perhaps a raid coming. Like those are pretty much some of the things they've laid out in this blog post for us. Obviously next week I'm gonna try to so here's the thing, and I'm gonna let you guys know right now, for those of you that are not watching my streams or whatever, but I will try next week. I don't know if I can, but I'm gonna try whatever they have to make a video on, or live stream. If they have a live stream, they haven't given us any specifics. If they're giving us a live stream next week, I'm gonna try to live stream their stream and give you guys my live reaction to it. Or if they're doing like they did with Secrets of the Obscure, giving us a bunch of blog posts, I'm going to make a big video about it and tell you guys my opinion about all the things happening with the blog posts and my impressions on it and stuff like that. So, and give you guys more theorizing on where we're going, the locations, the maps, the things, the people, the story. It's super exciting. I'm very excited. So I hope you guys are excited as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate it. You can also become a member if you'd like to support me even further. We have some really cool owl emojis, and I'm looking to maybe, you know, as we get more, as I get more subscribers, I get more slots open for emojis. So I will be hopefully at some point in the future getting more emojis for you guys, so you'll have like a plethora of them to use during the live chats and stuff like that. So but yeah, that's you know, that's pretty much it, guys. So, you know, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys are excited like me, and let me know what you guys think of my theories, and let me know your own theories in the comments, because I would love to hear what you guys are theorizing, what you guys are hoping for, what you guys want to see. I'm very stoked, and yeah, that's gonna be it. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.